as women in particular, we grow so much from connecting with each other and sharing that love. Hi, my name is Dr. Stacy Thomas. I'm a clinical psychologist practicing in Toronto, and I am so honored and happy to have with me Miss Nikki Bergen here today, who is a force of nature and is someone right at the forefront of women's health in Toronto. She is the founder of the Bell Method, the creator of Elevate Retreats, Pilates instructor, pelvic floor specialist, and a woman who has facilitated many conversations that women need to be having and are designed all to empower women with good information on topics ranging from everything between how to succeed as a female entrepreneur to restoring your pelvic floor post-pregnancy. This is all very impressive, and it's something that so many women have benefited from in this city, including myself. But this is not the reason why we're here today. The reason why we're here today is because of something that Nikki did recently that took a lot of courage. But in some ways it's not surprising knowing you, because you're somebody who's keeping it real on many levels. And this was another part of that, but you just took it to 11, okay?
Thanks.
Which is really about sharing something on social media, very personal, which was the fact that you and your partner are going through the process of treatment for infertility.
Yep.
It was a huge reveal, and the reason why we're here today, because it's a conversation that many women need to have. It's a situation that many women and couples are dealing with in isolation. And it's hard. And so I thank you so much for coming here today and being able to share a little bit more about your experience.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I'm wondering if we could start with the beginning of
Sure.
this process in terms of my understanding of that for you.
Yep.
And your decision to share this with people.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was really this place that, at first it comes as a complete surprise, because we have this idea that we can, especially if you're kind of an A-type person and you like to plan things,
Right.
and all of a sudden you're like, well, this isn't happening for us. And then you go in and you go for testing and you realize that things aren't completely the way that, you hoped or thought they would be.
Right.
And you realize that you don't really have control over it. But then you also realize that it's a weird conversation to have with people. And I started to feel, I didn't share it right away. Probably took me at least 4 or 5 months to start to open up about it. And I realized that I was sort of walking around with this mask on. And this mask was creating distance and a block between me and the clients that I work with and my friends and people I care about deeply.
Okay.
And it was this idea that, especially walking into like my prenatal class, which I teach, and I'm surrounded by beautiful, glowing, pregnant women, and I started to, if I'm honest, dread that class.
Sure.
And this is a population of women that I'm very passionate about working with and educating and empowering. And I started to be like, oh, and I didn't understand why I didn't like Mondays. And then I realized, well, yeah, it's because I'm surrounded by, these pregnant women. And I had to shift that, because I'm sure that if they hadn't started to pick up on that, they would have eventually begun to pick up on that. And it just felt like the hardest people to tell would be the pregnant people, because you just didn't know how they would react. So before I shared anything on social media, I thought, I didn't want this class, the women in that class, to find out through an Instagram post. So I just said to them, in the name of us being authentic, which is a huge buzzword these days.
Yes.
And it took guts, and I was shaking a little bit when I said it. And I said, you know what, I want this to be a safe place for us to come and talk about, our fears and our stuff. And, in the name of creating that space, there's something I wanted to share with you. And I said, I wanted to let you guys know that my husband and I are really struggling to conceive. And I'm about to start talking about it more, and I didn't want you to find out through that. I wanted to share it with you guys first.
Okay, nice.
And, I had to like hold back tears at the time, and it was incredible because right after that, like, they all immediately opened up. One woman came forward, she's like, well, I've had 3 miscarriages. Wow. And one other woman was like, yeah, it took me 1.5 years to conceive. And all these stories started coming out. One woman had to do IVF. And so it was wrong of me to assume that these women just immediately, got pregnant, lucky for them. Like, they all had stories that they also weren't sharing.
Right.
And it was really, like, I'm getting shivers actually just talking about it right now. They all had stories. Yeah. And that gave me then the courage to then share on a much larger level online.
Okay. And so really interesting that you had that recognition that secret that you were holding was creating distance, and that you couldn't really connect properly without addressing it.
For sure.
Right. And amazing what unfolded in terms of you becoming even closer to those women in your class.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And now I have, and of course since sharing on social media, it's you reached out to me, you saw the post.
Yes.
I mean, and it was, the first post was a picture of me in pre-surgery, because I had to go in for surgery in July for a polyp removal in the uterus. And it was my first time going under general anesthesia, and it was a big deal, and for a variety of reasons. Yeah. But I was like, I had taken a selfie, like looking like a scared animal before going into surgery, and I had sent it to my best girlfriend. And I think in the message I had sent to her in like the locker room where you store your stuff before surgery, I was like, oh my God, imagine I posted this, like LOL, like as if I would never in a million years post that photo. Yeah. And then I thought, you know what? That's the perfect photo to post, because it's like no makeup, like looking very scared. And I was petrified. And I went in, and that was the photo I started the conversation with, just to say, like, this is happening, and there's no shame in it.
No.
And that was a big thing, because I think so many women feel like somehow, it's their fault, or that, if only they had, I don't know, maybe not partied so hard in their 20s, or if they hadn't smoked when they were 15, or, I mean, you name it. Like, there are so many things that women feel as something inherently wrong with them. And I think sometimes you can be the healthiest person ever. There's naturopaths I know who have struggled with infertility.
Absolutely.
And they're naturopaths, like, they know exactly what they should be eating and supplements, and it still doesn't necessarily change anything.
Right. And so that's all this is the kind of games we play in terms of trying to regain a sense of control. Like, somehow there's something I could have done, or maybe I'm not doing well enough. I need to relax more.
Oh God, that's the worst. For the record, like, don't tell me to relax more. Because it's like when someone's really mad and then someone's really upset and you're like, just relax. Does that make you more relaxed?
Right.
No, it's the opposite. It's infuriating. Yeah. So it's certainly meditation and a practice of that, but it's something that you need to find yourself, someone else telling you just need to relax, and it will happen. Right. Speak to any woman going through infertility. It's not what you want to say.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that leads me to want to ask you about, now that you shared this, and clearly it's helped rally support among you, and also facilitate conversations among the other women about their journey to conceive, and all of the ups and downs and loss and highs of that whole process, which is life, like, at its fullest, really, right? And but it is tricky. It is tricky sometimes for people who might want to support you that don't know what to say. Yeah. People who don't know if they should say something or not. So it's one of those things. It's almost like dealing with someone who's suffered a loss, for example.
For sure.
Right? And it's like, I don't want to, be inappropriate or put them in a place that they don't want to be right now, but I want to acknowledge it. Do you have any advice for the friends, the family of someone who they know is challenge to conceive?
I think that generally, any woman going through infertility or any couple, they know that everyone has the best of intentions. So people say things that are not helpful, but deep down they're trying to be helpful.
Right.
So we have to remember that. When someone says, oh, my brother's sister's girlfriend had, twins, even though they were trying for 2 years, it'll happen for you. Well, it might not.
Right.
But that they're just trying to say something that will make you feel better. I think that in general, an authentic that's really hard. I'm sorry, I'm wishing and hoping for you and sending you really good vibes. Like, that's all you really need, right? All you want. You don't necessarily need advice.
Right.
And I think that in general, it's more about holding space for that person, and you don't have to shy away from it to say like, oh, that's the pink elephant. You should be like, I know what you're going through is really shitty and hard, and that sucks, and I'm really sorry. That's all it is,
Right.
Yeah.
So just being really genuine and meeting you where you're at.
Yeah.
And not necessarily trying to fix it for you.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And, certainly very gracious of you to really be able to see that people have the best of intentions. Yeah, absolutely. And just be able to say, yeah, it's okay. I'm okay. I'm living through it, but thank you so much for thinking of me.
Totally. Yeah. I think that I have very great close girlfriends I've grown up with, and they haven't experienced it. So I don't necessarily, expect them to understand. But what's been really amazing is that since sharing this, I have had, text messages, Facebook messages from people who I have become closer with because they have said, oh, by the way, I've gone through this.
Okay.
And those are the women that I will text and call and be like, well, did this happen to you on, day 12? And did you get, even to the nitty gritty medical stuff?
Right.
Because they've lived it, and they can say, yeah, that happened to me, or no, I haven't heard about that. Or and it's very, very helpful. And that's what I find has really been probably the most amazing thing that's happened from opening up about it. I had an experience last weekend where I was at the clinic. In the morning, you have to go for blood work, and it doesn't matter if it's Saturday or Sunday, you have to go in when it's the right timing in your cycle. So I was in there, and it's interesting, you go into these clinics, and it's a huge business, and it's busy, and nobody really makes eye contact. I guess we should wait for that train to go past.
Say that again. Nobody's making eye contact?
So you're in these clinics, and it's very busy, and it's a place where, a lot of women just want to go in, and then they want to leave as soon as possible. And, there's this place where everyone's going through the similar thing, and yet nobody talks, and nobody makes even eye contact, really. It's kind of like this place. And so, you don't know what their story is, but it's not this place where you want to grab a coffee and talk about your stuff. You just kind of want to forget about it and go on with the rest of your day. And so I was there last Saturday, and I get a message from this woman on Facebook, and she's like, did I just see you at the clinic? And sure enough, and this is someone who was actually on one of my retreats a year ago.
Oh, wow.
We became best friends. I have not seen her since the retreat that I did, and she was one of the guests. And she's like, did I just see you at the clinic? I was like, yeah. You're there? Like, what? And so now we're texting each other, and she's like, how are you doing? And I've heard about her stuff. And, I guess it was funny, I didn't recognize her because I was one of those people too that was just in, out, look at your phone, don't look up, and now since then I've started looking around, making eye contact. And if someone meets my eyes and we can give each other that assuring smile, it's this strange camaraderie that exists.
What's your understanding of that? What is it about kind of going inward and just kind of cutting yourself off when in the clinic?
I think there are some days you walk in there and I'm sure you're feeling pretty good, and then other days you're feeling like a bag of mush and you want to keep your shit together. And if you open yourself up, it might mean that you fall apart elsewhere in your life. So
Okay.
this is usually done before work.
Right.
So you've got a full day of being productive, client facing. You can't like have a mental breakdown at 7 a.m., which is when you're there, and then carry on with the rest of your day. So you have to keep it together.
Right.
And so I think part of that is kind of building this wall where you're like, I'm not going to let myself really feel what I'm feeling right now because I need to function.
Right. So it's survival, essentially.
I think so.
For the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And is part of it just the level of intervention, like the medicalization of this process that under the best of circumstances can happen naturally in a much different environment.
Right.
Right? Is that part of it? Just the poking and prodding and the statistics and the
poking and the prodding. Yeah, well, I mean, it's not nice to go into a exam room at 7 a.m. and have an invasive ultrasound. That's for sure. I think you just do what you need to do. I think that the desire to have a child is much greater than these. You start to look at it. I hated needles, and now it's like, here you go. Like you're just, here's my vein. It's amazing what we can overcome and just get over when we want something. And if this is the path that we need to take, and then so be it. No sense in complaining about it. Just get it over with.
Right. And so the journey to parenthood is already starting. This kind of sacrifice, essentially. And your body is your body, but it's also not fully your own in this process. Like there's so much that's going on, even with pregnancy that
totally.
It's you, but there's somebody else. There's another process unfolding, and you are housing and nurturing that process. And one of the things I talk about with my clients who are going through this challenge as well is that in this scenario, you are having to have conversations and prepare yourself in a way for parenting that people who get to have this experience the regular way, they kind of do it after the fact.
Yeah.
It really forces you to really think about your priorities, your plans, how you're living, how you're communicating, the home that you're creating.
That's true. Yeah, it can be very tough on relationships. I'm very fortunate that I have a really understanding and supportive husband. I do think that it's just, I'd like to think that, when the time comes, because I truly do believe that the universe has a plan and it will happen some way or other. I think one of the things that I tell myself on the regular basis is, or I try to tell myself, is that I need to really surrender. And when I think I've surrendered, I need to surrender more.
Wow.
And so I have to continue to remember that maybe this is an example where I can't write down my list of goals and put this as a goal. And, I have to surrender to the process that any plans that I might have had, I need to trust that the universe has an even greater plan for me and my husband. And so that's a powerful place. And when I start to realize that and believe, when I choose to devote my energy to believing instead of to fearing, then I feel so much more positive.
Wow.
I have to, and you can choose, and that's the thing. Like, we may not have control over, when it happens or how it happens, but we can choose our thoughts, and I can choose to believe that it will happen rather than to fear, every month that goes by that I'm getting older and that my eggs are dwindling, or, all the things that you can tell yourself.
Right, absolutely.
So you have to choose to believe.